The wind came first, dragging a ribbon of snow across the plain like a warning whispered too late. It curled under doors and into lungs sharp as regret. The sky had already gone the color of tarnished pewter, and the last smoke column in Bridger's Hollow trailed from a lonesome chimney just past the willows. Bo Thatcher was oiling the hinges on the barn door when he heard it. A knock. Not the kind a neighbor gives, not the kind a salesman makes. This one was softer, slower, a hope held in trembling fingers. He stood, boots scraping ice, and turned toward the sound. The front door, not the barn. Not many came that way anymore. Bo wiped his hands and crossed the yard, the snow crunching underfoot like brittle paper. The wind caught his coat, pulling it tight across his frame. He opened the door with one hand and held the barrel of his old rifle loosely in the other, more from habit than fear. She stood there, hunched beneath a fraying shawl, her cheeks flushed red from the cold, her eyes wide but calm. "Can I stay?" she said, voice barely more than a shape in the air. "Just till morning?" Bo stared. She was young, no older than 19. Her dress was once pink, but the road had dulled it to a mud-streaked rose. One boot was missing, replaced with a torn stocking and what looked like a scrap of potato sack tied around her toes. Her belly pushed outward, heavy with child, the fabric stretched taut as if the dress itself were straining to hold her together. Bo said nothing. He stepped aside. She hesitated, searching his face. Whatever she found there, it must have been enough. She stepped in, slow, like someone afraid to wake ghosts. The warmth hit her like a wave and her shoulders sagged. She glanced around. It was a plain cabin, wood stove burning low, a worn table, 2 chairs, one with its back legs splinted with twine. A pot of coffee steamed on the hearth. 2 cups sat on the shelf. Only one had been used in a long while. Bo set the rifle against the doorframe. "Name?" She looked at her hands. "Delaney May." Bo nodded. He didn't give his. He walked past her, grabbed a folded quilt from the cot in the corner, and handed it over without meeting her eyes. Then he tossed another log into the stove, the fire spitting sparks in protest. Delaney May lowered herself onto the rug near the warmth and wrapped the quilt around her shoulders. Her breath trembled from her lips, and when she turned her face slightly away, Bo caught the quick swipe of her hand across her cheek. He didn't ask. The silence stretched between them, not awkward, just full. She watched him make another cup of coffee, pour it black, and sip. His face was unreadable, lined more from weather than age. The scar that traced along his jaw caught the light when he turned toward the fire. "You don't ask much," she said, voice smaller than before. "You look like you already been asked too much," he replied, and the quiet returned, softer this time. She pulled the quilt tighter. Her body shuddered once, not from cold. That night, Bo lay on his cot, the thin mattress groaning beneath him. Across the room, Delaney lay curled like a comma near the stove, one hand resting on the swell of her stomach. The firelight danced shadows across the logs, stretching and shrinking like breathing. Outside, the storm arrived in earnest, snow hammering the roof, wind clawing at the windows. Bo didn't sleep. In the dark, he thought about the last knock he'd answered. 2 winters ago. Fever had taken Maribel in 3 days. No warning, no mercy. One moment she was humming over stew, the next she was burning up and gone before the 3rd dawn. After her, no one knocked. He hadn't noticed how much he missed the sound until tonight. Morning came slow, gray, reluctant. The storm had passed but left its mark. Snow drifted against the door and icicles hung from the eaves like threats. Bo rose and found Delaney still sleeping, her hand still on her belly. Her lips were parted slightly, the lines on her brow softened. She looked like a girl who had run too far and finally collapsed somewhere she hoped was safe. He let her sleep. By the time she stirred, the coffee was reheated and the bread sliced, what little was left. He laid a plate on the table, butter curled in the tin dish beside it. Not a word spoken. Just a gesture. She sat across from him, legs wrapped in the quilt, hands trembling as she lifted the tin cup. "It's strong," she said, sipping the coffee. "Best I can do," he said. Delaney offered a flicker of a smile. "It's better than silence." Bo didn't respond. Just kept eating. Mid-morning she tried to stand and nearly fell. He caught her elbow. Her hand pressed against his chest for balance. It lingered just a second too long. She pulled away quickly, cheeks flushing. "Didn't mean to." "Sockeye." He helped her to the rocker by the stove. It creaked beneath her weight, but held. Her hands rested on the arms like they weren't sure they were allowed to. Bo turned back to the sink, scrubbed the plates. Outside, the sun hit the snow, throwing light through the window like spilled milk. Delaney stared at the corner of the room, at the second rocker. This one older. a shawl still draped across it as if someone might come back and need it. She sit there? Bo paused. Yeah. Delaney didn't press. Just nodded. Later, as Bo chopped wood out back, the second knock came, louder, sharper. Mrs. Agatha Purnell stood on the porch like judgment itself, bundled in 3 scarves and smelling of vinegar and opinion. I heard, she said without greeting, you took in some stray. Bo didn't answer. She's not married. Bo leaned his axe against the post. Didn't ask her. Mrs. Purnell sniffed. I'm the only midwife left within 20 miles. Thought you ought to know that. Someone will have to deliver it when it comes. Bo looked past her, toward the trees where the snow caught on every branch like lace. She's not asking for anything. Doesn't mean she won't. Mrs. Purnell turned and left. Her boots left deep prints in the snow like bruises. That evening, Bo returned to find Delaney sitting by the fire, hands in her lap. She didn't look up. She called me a stray, didn't she? Her voice was calm. You didn't lie. Yeah. Delaney exhaled. That's fair. Bo pulled off his coat, hung it. Don't seem fair to me. She looked at him. Really looked. Then quietly, you don't talk much. Waste of words never built anything worth keeping. She smiled at that. A real one. Not wide. Just enough. She offered to sweep. He let her. Halfway through, she winced and paused, hand to her side. Bo crossed the room and gently took the broom from her. She didn't fight him. You need rest, he said. You need someone to clean. I've been living with dust. She laughed once, unexpected, a bit sad. I've been living with ghosts. Neither spoke again. But as Bo returned to the hearth and she returned to the chair, the silence didn't feel so empty. That night, as the wind picked up again and the snow whispered against the walls, Delaney lay awake watching the shadows move. Her hand rested on her belly. And across the room, Bo Thatcher stared at the ceiling and wondered, for the first time in 2 winters, if the sound of a baby crying might be a good thing. He closed his eyes just as a new pain gripped Delaney's side, sudden and sharp. She bit down on her knuckle, eyes wide. Outside, the storm began to rise again. The light came in low and gold the next morning, slipping past the frosted glass as if asking permission. The fire had gone to coals, but the heat still held. The silence between them wasn't broken so much as shifted, like the hush after a hymn. Bo Thatcher poured the coffee in 2 cups this time. Delaney sat with her knees drawn up in the rocking chair, her chin resting on them, watching him. Her hair was a mess of tangled curls, loose from sleep and not cared for in days. She hadn't asked for a comb. He hadn't offered one. But the quilt remained clutched around her shoulders like it had become part of her body now, armor stitched of cotton and yesterday's grace. Bo slid the coffee her way. She nodded her thanks and held the cup with both hands. Her fingers were red at the knuckles, rough-skinned and chapped. Storms passed, Bo said. Delaney took a sip before answering. Looks like it left some things behind. He followed her gaze toward the door. Snow was drifted high against it. The shape of a tree limb had fallen across the roof and knocked one of the shingles loose. Beyond that, a sky so pale it could have been glass. I'll dig a path to the barn, Bo muttered. Delaney shifted in her seat, then winced, her hand going instinctively to her stomach. The baby had moved hard. She let out a slow breath. You don't have to feed me, she said. I'll be on my way when I can walk better. Bo didn't answer. She glanced down at the plate he'd put out, 2 crusts of bread, thick butter, and a peach half from an old jar. She stared at the peach. I stole one once, she said. From a preacher's wife's cupboard. Thought she wouldn't notice, but she did. She told everyone I was cursed. Bo didn't flinch. Delaney swallowed. That's how it started. The whispers. Cursed womb, cursed mouth, cursed skin. You cursed now? She looked him square in the eye. No. But folks love a woman who makes a good scapegoat. Bo stood. Walked toward the stove. Eat. Delaney picked up a crust and chewed it slowly. The butter was cold but thick and real. There were footsteps in the snow, approaching. Both of them froze. Then a knock, brisk and practiced. Bo opened the door just wide enough to see the sour profile of Mrs. Agatha Purnell, bonnet askew and gloves too tight for her swollen knuckles. Well, she said, peering over his shoulder. Still here, is she? Bo nodded once. Mrs. Purnell pursed her lips. I brought towels. She'll need them soon enough. She pushed a bundle wrapped in brown cloth into his hands. Don't mean I approve. Didn't ask you to, Bo said. She sniffed. But someone ought to say it. That girl's the kind who invites trouble. Carry in a child with no ring, no story, and no family? Lord knows what devilry she'll bring with her. Bo didn't speak. He didn't move either. Mrs. Purnell leaned forward, lowering her voice. They'll talk, Thatcher. Already are. Say you lost your wife and your good sense along with her. Bo's voice when it came was flat. Saying don't make it true. Mrs. Purnell blinked. For a moment, just a flicker, something softer crossed her face. Then she stepped back, adjusted her bonnet, and turned down the path she'd just carved with her boots. Bo shut the door. Didn't bother explaining. He dropped the bundle by the fire. Delaney looked at the towels but said nothing. Her shoulders had gone stiff. What else they say? She asked after a long silence. Bo didn't answer. Delaney set her coffee down carefully. They always do. Women like me don't get to be mysteries. We get turned into warnings. He looked at her. My mama died when I was 7, she said quietly. My pa drank till he couldn't remember he had daughters. Then forgot to come back from the saloon one night. The men that found me said I was free. But that ain't the same as being safe. Bo sat across from her again. The father? Delaney's jaw tightened. Cousin's husband. Said I was pretty once. Said I asked for it. Then they all did. Her voice didn't shake. That was the worst part. Bo didn't move. Didn't reach for her. But his gaze held steady. I walked 4 days, she said. Begging a little, stealing a little. The babies do any day, but it wouldn't have mattered to anyone if I'd bled out in a ditch. She stopped. Her lips trembled just once. She bit the inside of her cheek till the color came back. Then Bo rose slowly and walked to the shelf near the stove. He took down a small crock, uncorked it, and brought out a bundle of dried lavender tied with twine. Without a word, he set it beside her plate. What's this? Smell helps, he said. When pain comes. She picked it up, held it to her nose. The scent was soft like memory. Her lashes fluttered. Your wife. Bo nodded. Was she kind? She was quiet, he said. But not soft. Delaney smiled faintly. Sounds like someone I would have liked. That evening, Delaney tried to sweep. She moved slow, dragging the broom across the boards with careful effort. When she reached the hearth, she leaned too far. A flash of pain jolted her side. She gasped, stumbled, and fell hard to her knees. Bo was beside her before she even had time to curse. Don't, she snapped, pushing his hands away. I'm fine. You're not, he said, not with anger, just fact. She sat on the floor, legs folded awkwardly, one arm wrapped around her middle. Bo crouched. He didn't touch her again. Just waited. Finally she said, I hate being a burden. You're not. I don't believe you. He paused. Then I'll carry you anyway. She looked up. Her eyes were glassy. Why? Bo didn't answer that. Just rose and fetched her the chair again. She climbed in without argument, her breath shallow. That night, the fire burned high, casting long golden shadows across the room. Delaney watched them from the rocker, hand on her belly. The lavender bundle rested on the table beside her. Bo sat at the far end of the table, whittling a stick into a small horse. His hands moved slow, deliberate. The sound of the knife shaving would fill the silence like a lullaby. Delaney's voice broke the quiet. Did you bury her nearby? Bo's knife stopped. Your wife, she added. Bo nodded once. By the willows. Delaney looked out the frosted window. I think if I had a place like that, I'd rest better. You have no one? She shook her head. Then you got no one telling you who to be either. She stared at him, surprised. He stood and walked to the mantel, placing the unfinished horse next to a row of others, tiny carvings, each one different. A deer. A pair of boots. A willow tree. Delaney's voice softened. You made all those? After, Bo said. After her? He nodded. And now me. Bo didn't reply. A log in the stove split, crackled, and fell in on itself. Delaney's hand slid protectively to her stomach again. She kicks when I talk. I think she knows I'm still trying. Bo turned, one hand still on the mantel. His face unreadable, but something flickered there, something fragile. You gonna name her? Delaney hesitated. Then, Hope. Because if she don't have it, what's left? Bo nodded slowly. Then walked past her toward the back room. She watched him go, but before he disappeared she asked, Bo? He paused in the doorway. Will you let me stay, if I still got nowhere else after? He looked back. Storm ain't over yet, he said. No use sending you out into it. She blinked, trying not to cry. In the corner, the lavender bundle caught the light and swayed just slightly in the warm air. Outside, the wind had picked up again. And somewhere inside her, a new ache bloomed, different from the ones she'd known. Not fear. Not hunger. Something like the first warmth after winter. The sky above Bridger's Hollow held the color of a bruise by morning, purple layered over gray, threaded with dull gold. It was a town that woke slow, like it regretted the things it had let happen and the things it hadn't dared to stop. Bo Thatcher saddled his horse just after sunup. His coat was still damp from brushing the frost off the barn door. He didn't say anything as he packed his small satchel with tobacco, flour, and a note scrawled on the back of a feed slip. Delaney had written the list with careful fingers, even though her hands had begun to swell. She watched him from the cabin's small window. Her reflection floated over the glass like a ghost that hadn't decided if it wanted to stay. "I'll be back before noon," Bo said, stepping in to lay kindling by the stove. Delaney nodded. "You're sure they won't try anything?" He met her eyes. "If they do, they'll wish they hadn't." Then he was gone, and the sound of hooves grew smaller with each second, until only the wind remained, light and nervous like a dog that didn't know whether to bark or hide. Delaney breathed into her hands and stared at the hearth. Something stirred low in her back, a tightening that didn't quite release. She closed her eyes and whispered to the child beneath her ribs, "Don't come today, little one. Wait till there's someone home." In town, Bo's arrival caused a stir, not in volume but in glances. Folks didn't say much in Bridger's Hollow, but they were experts at saying things without needing to open their mouths. A tilt of the head. A shoulder that didn't shift to make space at the counter. A pause too long before returning change. The general store bell jingled as he stepped inside. Cal Harker, the storekeep, looked up over his spectacles. "Morning, Bo." Bo removed his gloves. "Need flour. Tin of lard. Needle and thread." Cal raised a brow. "Sewing something, are you?" Bo said nothing. Cal nodded slowly and pulled the items from behind the counter. "Word is you've got company." Bo handed him the note. "She ain't trouble." Cal hesitated. "That's not what Agatha Purnell's been telling folks." Bo's eyes lifted. Mrs. Purnell should mind her pie crusts. Someone behind him coughed into a hand, over loud. Bo turned enough to see Sheriff Lowell leaning by the post rack, arms crossed, boot tapping slow against the wood floor. "Thatcher," the sheriff said with a voice like a tired blade. "You settin' up a house for her now? Bit soon, don't you think?" Bo packed his items into his satchel. "She's sheltering. That's all. She's pregnant. She's unmarried. And she's sleeping under your roof. That makes it your concern, and mine." Bo looked him full in the face. "You come near her, you better bring more than a badge." A silence settled. Even the floorboards seemed to hold their breath. Then the sheriff smiled thinly. "You always were sentimental about lost causes." Bo turned and walked out, his boots heavy and sure. Back at the cabin, Delaney lit the fire again and began to fold the clean towels Mrs. Purnell had left behind. Her fingers worked slow and her breath hitched every few minutes. She didn't mention it. She refused to count the intervals. Instead, she cleaned the spoon tin, rearranged the dried herbs on the shelf, and gently wiped the carved willow tree Bo had placed near the mantel. It was small, but the roots were deep in the grain. Outside, the wind was calmer now, but the cold remained, a hush pressed into the corners of the world. She spotted it before she heard it. A figure, small but quick, darting across the snowline. Not Bo. A child. Barefoot, dress flying like a flag of mischief and hunger. Delaney opened the door before the girl could knock. The child froze. She couldn't have been older than 9. Blonde hair chopped to the chin. Blue scarf tied too tight around her neck. "I ain't beggin'," the girl said immediately. "Just a skin dot." Delaney stepped aside. "Come in before your toes turn to glass." Inside, the girl hovered near the fire like she expected it to be snatched away. Delaney handed her a slice of bread from the cupboard, more crust than anything but warm. "What's your name?" "Ella May." Delaney smiled. "Mine's Delaney. You got folk." Ella shrugged. "Mama works the saloon till midnight. Sheriff don't like me hanging round there." Delaney watched her chew. "You cold?" Ella nodded. Delaney took the extra shawl from the peg and draped it over the child's shoulders. "This used to be mine." The girl's hands clutched it like it was velvet. "You gonna give the baby away?" Delaney blinked. "No. Why would I?" "'Cause folks say you ain't fit." Delaney sat down slowly, the ache in her back mounting. "Folks say a lot of things. Most of it's got nothing to do with truth." The girl looked at her differently then. "You ever been mean?" "Once," Delaney whispered. "But it hurt me more than the person I was mean to." Ella finished the bread. "They'll come for you." Delaney's throat tightened. "You think so?" Ella nodded. "But not him. He'll stand for you. He's got the look of a wall that don't fall even in wind. Delaney smiled softly. He don't say much. He don't have to, Alice said, already near sleep. Sometimes being quiet makes folks hear you louder. Bo returned at midday to find them like that. Delaney curled in the rocker, one hand on her belly, the other resting lightly on a sleeping girl wrapped in shawl and crumbs. He stood in the doorway a moment longer than usual. Delaney opened one eye. She was hungry. Bo nodded. It's fine. Her mama's in town. She'll head back before sundown. Bo set down the bag. You all right? Delaney nodded too quickly. He watched her a moment. You're hurting. I'm managing. Bo crouched beside the chair. He didn't touch her. Just looked at her like she wasn't something broken but something fighting. I brought thread, he said. Delaney smiled. Hope you're not expecting embroidery. Just need the hem fixed on the crib blanket. The one she'll use. She blinked hard. You're making her a blanket? Bo stood. Not yet. But I will. That night, Ella left with a crust in her pocket and a secret kind of gratitude she didn't know how to say out loud. Delaney waved from the porch, breath fogging in the dimming air. Later, as Bo chopped wood beneath a rising moon, Delaney found the crib blanket, still folded, the threads frayed but still whole. She ran her fingers over the worn cotton. In the corner sat the bundle of lavender, and near it, a new carving, a cradle, tiny and smooth, placed on the mantel beside the willow tree. She stood for a long while, rocking gently in front of the fire. Her body was tired. Her heart was restless. But somewhere in the middle of all that ache, she felt something strange and wild and soft blooming where fear had lived for too long. She whispered to the child, You're not born yet, but you're already being made welcome. Outside the wind had gone still. Inside the silence was no longer hollow. She turned as Bo came in with snow still on his coat. His eyes met hers, and in that moment, no words, no declarations, there was something exchanged. A vow not yet spoken. A fire not yet touched. But it was coming. And this time the town would have to watch. The pain came before the storm returned. It was just past midnight, the world outside blanketed in quiet, when Delaney sat up too fast in the rocker and the firelight caught her face twisted in something she tried to ignore for 2 days. It wasn't the small aches anymore, the stretching, the pulsing. This one clutched deep and refused to let go, like something ancient waking inside her. She bit the inside of her cheek and waited for it to pass. It didn't. Bo was asleep in the back room, door open just enough for light to spill across the threshold. She didn't call out. Not at first. She stood, bracing one hand against the wall, and took 2 steps before the next contraction knocked her to her knees. A small sound slipped from her, half gasp, half plea. That was all it took. Bo was there before she could rise again, barefoot, hair mussed, shirt half buttoned. His eyes weren't confused. They were clear. How long? He asked, crouching beside her. She gritted her teeth, clutching the base of the chair. Started slow, hours ago. I didn't want. You should have told me. I thought I had more time. Another wave came, sharper, meaner. She cried out before she could stop herself. The cabin, usually quiet as prayer, felt too small now, every board holding its breath. Bo helped her to the bedroll near the stove. It wasn't much, but it was warm, soft. He threw more logs on the fire, each one hissing as the heat took hold. The light grew gold and large, wrapping around them like a shield. Need help? Bo muttered, already reaching for his coat. Stay here. I'll get her. Delaney caught his sleeve. Bo. He looked down. She didn't say it, don't leave me. She didn't have to. I'll be quick, he said, then was gone out into the dark. The wind had picked up again, sleeting sideways, biting through wool. He rode fast, hard, not thinking of the cold. Only of the woman bleeding into the floor of his life, her pain echoing louder than any church bell. Mrs. Purnell's house glowed dim under the edge of a lantern. Bo didn't knock. He banged the door open with his fist. Thatcher, she said, startled, gray hair loose around her shoulders. What? She's in labor, he said. Come now. At this hour? She needs you. Mrs. Purnell grabbed her kit before she could think better. She didn't ask who she was. She already knew. Back at the cabin, Delaney lay with one hand on her belly, the other wrapped around the lavender bundle. She whispered to it, like it might soften the fire in her bones. Bo burst in with Mrs. Purnell close behind. Warm water, the older woman barked. Towels? I hope you boiled everything. Bo was already moving. Mrs. Purnell knelt beside Delaney, wiping her brow. How far apart? I don't know, Delaney gasped. Minutes? Seconds. Mrs. Purnell checked. Her face didn't change, but her fingers moved faster. It's coming hard. Delaney grabbed her arm. Is she all right? She's stubborn. I'll give her that. A cry tore through her, loud and aching. Bo returned with the basin. He didn't try to stand back. He stayed beside her, kneeling, letting her crush his fingers with each wave. He didn't flinch. Breathe, Delaney. I am, she said, voice ragged. It just hurts too damn much. I know. She turned to him, sweaty hair sticking to her cheeks. You ever watch someone die like this? Bo didn't answer. Because it feels like it. Another wave. This one longer. She screamed, and the fire seemed to echo it, licking higher. Mrs. Purnell gave instructions in a tight, calm voice. Next push, she's coming. Delaney sobbed, shaking her head. I can't. You already are, Bo said. You're doing it. She gritted her teeth and bore down. Then the silence came. No sound followed. Not crying. Not cooing. Just absence. Delaney's eyes widened. Where is she? Mrs. Purnell wrapped the baby quickly, rubbed her back. Still silence. Please, Delaney whispered. Please. Bo stepped forward, took the child into his hands. She was small, too still. He held her upright and gently tapped her back. Nothing. Delaney began to tremble. No. Don't let her. Then a small, broken gasp. A second one. Then a scream, thin and shrill and beautiful. Delaney collapsed back into the bedroll, sobbing as the baby's cries filled the cabin, louder than the storm. Bo looked down at the little girl in his arms and let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Mrs. Purnell cut the cord. She's fine. A little cold but strong. Very strong. Bo brought her to Delaney, placed the child against her chest. Delaney cradled the baby like she was afraid she might dissolve, skin against skin, tears streaking her cheeks. Bo sat back on his heels, chest rising and falling like he'd just fought something with teeth. The fire crackled low. She's here, Delaney whispered. She's here, Bo? He nodded. Mrs. Purnell stood and washed her hands. She glanced around the cabin, something in her expression softened. She picked up a cup, poured herself a sip of water, then laid a hand on Delaney's shoulder. I was wrong, she said. You're not cursed. Delaney met her eyes. But you told them I was. I know. She turned away. Let me fix that if I still can. Bo stood beside the hearth. For a long time no one spoke. Then, as Mrs. Purnell gathered her things, she paused near the mantel. She touched the tiny cradle Bo had carved earlier that week. Maribel used to sing in this room, she said softly. Bo's face didn't change. Yeah. She'd be glad you opened the door again. When she left, she shut the door gently behind her. Delaney dozed in the firelight, the baby curled in her arms, mouth open in sleep. Bo watched them both, hand resting on the back of the rocking chair. There were no declarations. No promises. Just warmth. And breath. And a silence that held more meaning than any vow. Then Delaney stirred. You held her before I did. Bo's eyes flickered. She cried in your hands. He nodded. She trusts you. The fire popped once. So do I, she whispered. Outside the snow fell soft and steady. Inside the fire burned on, reaching every corner of that once lonely cabin. And above them the child slept, heart steady as a drumbeat. Dawn came without thunder, without triumph. Just a low light washing over the world like forgiveness. Pale rays sifted through the cabin window, touching the floor, the cold kettle, the back of Bo Thatcher's hand where it rested beside the bedroll. Delaney was still, her breath shallow but even. The baby lay bundled against her chest, small and stubborn, face slack with sleep. One tiny fist had found the hollow at Delaney's collarbone and rested there like it belonged. Bo had not moved for hours. He had held the water, braced her hips, cleaned what could be cleaned. He had watched fear come and go in waves, watched Delaney split herself to bring someone else into the world. He had seen women cry before. He had never watched one do it without apology. He did not speak when she stirred, only reached for the rag and dabbed her forehead. Her lashes fluttered open. Her voice was hoarse, barely breath. She's warm. He nodded. Fire held. Delaney turned slightly, grimacing. What time is it? Early. She studied him. You didn't sleep. I'll sleep later. Her mouth twitched, tired, not amused. That's what I said about pain. Didn't work out too well. Bo allowed himself the faintest smile. Delaney looked down at the baby, then back up. Do you want to hold her? He hesitated. She already knows your voice. She heard it through the wood, every time you cursed at that stove. Bo sat slowly beside them. She lifted the infant and he took her with both hands, awkward, unsure. She squirmed once, blinked up at him and went still. Bo stared at her like a man watching spring break through frost. Not sudden, but inevitable. She's real, he said. Delaney nodded. She is. He rocked her gently. You name her? I wanted to wait until she heard it. Bo's brow lifted just slightly. Delaney watched him. Hope, she said. Not for what comes easy, but for what keeps us breathing when everything else wants us to stop. Bo looked down at the baby. Hope Thatcher. Her gaze sharpened. You'd let her have your name? He met her eyes. She was born in my home, in my bedroll. I held her before the world could. If that don't make her mine, nothing will. Delaney pressed her palm to her mouth, then let it fall. You're not obligated. I don't do things from obligation. A knock came before either could speak again. Sure. Firm. Bo rose, handed Hope gently back and crossed the cabin in 3 strides. He opened the door with the same calm he used to open gates, expecting trouble but never fearing it. Sheriff Lowell stood on the porch. 2 men behind him, wide-shouldered ranch hands from town. I heard, the sheriff said. Town says a child was born here last night. Bo didn't blink. You heard right. She legal? Bo stepped out onto the porch, shutting the door behind him with a quiet click. She's human. That's what matters. The sheriff narrowed his eyes. That girl's still not married. Baby's got no claim to this land. That makes her subject to county inquiry. Bo didn't move. I've had complaints, the sheriff went on. Women worried about morality. About precedent. She's not a precedent, Bo said. She's a mother. The sheriff took a step forward. You siding with a girl whose name we don't even know how to spell? Bo's voice dropped, low and even. Delaney May. And you'll speak it with respect. The 2 ranch hands shifted. One scratched his neck. The other looked at the ground. You're risking your place in this town, the sheriff said. Bo stared at him. Then it ain't a town worth staying in. A silence hung heavy. The wind blew past, tugging at coat hems and stirring the dust along the step. Then one of the ranch hands said, Let it go, Sheriff. The other nodded. He's not wrong. The sheriff looked between them, jaw tight, but the fight was gone from his shoulders. He gave Bo one last look, part warning, part something else. Then he turned and walked off the porch. The others followed. Bo stood still until their shapes disappeared into the trees. Inside, Delaney had pulled her shawl around herself and was swaying slightly, Hope in her arms. The fire had dimmed, but its warmth still filled the corners. Bo came in, brushed snow from his coat, and shut the door behind him. What did he want? She asked. To remind me of the rules. And you? Bo poured coffee that had gone stale and dark and drank it anyway. I reminded him that some things ain't his to decide. Delaney looked down at the baby. We'll be watched now. We already were. I'm tired of being a story people tell wrong. Then stay, he said. Let them learn the truth slow. She didn't answer. He knelt beside her again. The baby had started to fuss, her mouth puckering like a tiny storm brewing. Bo offered his finger. She grabbed it, fierce and sure. I can't give her much, Delaney whispered. You already gave her everything. I'm scared. So am I. She looked up at him. I thought men like you only lived in books. Bo exhaled. I thought women like you didn't survive real winters. Hope let out a gurgle between them, tiny and content. They sat there, time slowing until the fire's pop felt like punctuation. Delaney leaned her head back against the rocker. If she grows up here, I want her to know what strength looks like. Bo ran a hand across his jaw. Then she just needs a mirror. For a long while no one spoke. Outside, the first birds of spring gave cautious calls into the frost-tipped morning. The porch creaked softly with thaw. Delaney shifted, reaching into the satchel Bo had brought days ago. She pulled out a folded piece of cloth, small, frayed, but whole. What's that? He asked. She held it up. It was a piece of embroidery. Uneven. Faded. Letters stitched in pale green, DM. My mother made it when I was born, she said. They said I'd die young. She stitched my name to give me weight. Bo took it from her hands, ran a thumb across the thread. Then I guess it worked, he said. Delaney smiled. Now I want something stitched for Hope. Bo rose, walked to the shelf, and took down the needle and thread he'd bought before the storm. We'll make it together, he said. Can you sew? No, he replied. But you can teach me. The baby had fallen asleep again. Outside the snow began to melt. Inside they began to stitch. Not just cloth, but a life. A name. A home.